exercise or physical activity in general are important for optimal health. I think most people would agree with that. But why is that? Why is exercise so important? What does it do to our body and mind if we work out? Or what happens when we don't? And what types of exercise or physical activity is best for longevity and optimal health? Those are some of the topics I'd like to discuss in this episode of the Primal Shift podcast. Before we get started again, as always, make sure you subscribe, you share, you follow, and because that really helps other people find this podcast, helps us with the ranking, and helps me make more episodes like this. So thank you very much for your support. Now let's talk about physical activity in general and exercise and what types of exercise are most beneficial for optimal health. But before we do that, let's think about what physical activity meant for our ancestors and early humans, because from there we can kind of deduct what types of exercise are best for our physiology and how we can incorporate it into our modern life. The other thing I want to talk about is the way of the human body to adapt to our environment. And, let's take astronauts as an extreme example. When they're out in space and they don't exercise, like in the early days of space travel, exercise was not an important aspect in the daily lives of astronauts. And what we've realized is that when, astronauts would come back to Earth, their bone density was significantly decreased. They suffered from muscle atrophy, meaning, the muscle tissue disappeared. But why? Well, because the body figured, if we are weightless, we don't need all that, the structure to support our body. We don't need strong bones. We don't need strong muscles or ligaments and joints because we are weightless. We don't need any of that stuff. And so naturally, the body starts spending fewer resources in keeping those tissues strong. And the same happens on Earth to a lesser degree. If we don't work out, if we don't lift heavy, if we don't sprint, if we don't work our cardiovascular system, then it gets weaker because evidently we don't need that. And the problem is, however, that there is a threshold where if your bones get weak enough, if your muscles get weak enough, if your cardiovascular system gets weak enough, then it becomes detrimental to our health, because suddenly our heart is incapable of dealing with, the burden, with the stressor, with dealing maybe with, all the environmental factors with our modern lives. And so we become weak, sick, and ultimately die prematurely because we, haven't challenged our bodies and our mind. And so that's really the core principle between exercise. You want to stimulate, you want to positively stress your body, your cardiovascular system, your bone tissue, your muscle tissue, your joints, and your ligaments, and send them the signal that we need to get stronger to deal with the loads we have to carry, with the grocery stores we have to carry, with the kids that we want to pick up. And we want to do all of those things pain-free. So that's ultimately the goal of physical activity. And so, in our modern lives, that, often means going to the gym or doing something, going out of our way, spending extra time on physical activity, on pursuing, exercise. Back in the days, there weren't any gyms. Nobody would, pencil into the calendar, going to the gym 2 hours a day, 3 times a week, because humans would naturally be physically active. Our ancestors used to walk for long distances in search for food and shelter. We would sprint either because we were running away from a threat, from a predator, or we were chasing one. We were trying to hunt and kill. And we were lifting, stones and rocks and trees and all kinds of things, to build shelter and to build caves, to dig holes, all of the things that were necessary for us to function. All of those things included physical activity, climbing trees to get up to a beehive to extract the honey, and all of those things just came natural to us. We didn't have to go out of our way to be physically active. Now, fast forward to our modern life, to my life. I'm sitting here, in front of a computer and recording a podcast episode, I'm not physically active doing it. I'm doing something that's not natural. I'm sitting in a position that's not consistent with our, history and with human physiology. We're doing a lot of things that are inconsistent with what our bodies were designed for. And so we need to compensate for that by going to the gym, by working out, by playing a sport, by all of those things. And it's important to do that because, as I said, if you don't do that, you're going to deteriorate. So you need to keep challenging yourself every day. Ideally, you need to keep challenging yourself, for until you drop dead, because as soon as you stop challenging your body, you will deteriorate. And the problem is, the older you get, the quicker you deteriorate. I mean, if you think back when you were in your early 20s, and you didn't work out for 2 weeks and then you came back, no big deal. You just picked up, where you left off. If now that I'm 41, I don't go to the gym in 2 weeks, I can feel the difference. My recovery suddenly is a little bit slower. My pain threshold might be lower. I get exhausted quicker. There are a lot of things that unfortunately accelerate, not always in a good way, when you get older. And so you need to keep up with challenging your body. And the best way to do that is to implement movements and modalities that mimic how our ancestors would have kept themselves physically active. And so the best example is, as I said before, they walked long distances in search for food and shelter. So walking is an incredibly powerful and I think often underappreciated type of exercise. The advantage of walking is that it's not only consistent with human evolution, but it's also very low impact. So even if you have joint issues, knee issues, from abuse that happened over decades, chances are hopefully you can still walk, pain-free. Walking is incredibly powerful. And if you ever looked at, not that I keep tabs on, how many calories I burn during working out, but if you walk for 3 miles or run 3 miles, you pretty much burn the same amount of calories, if that's your main concern. Walking just takes you longer, but it's still, you put an effort to cover the distance of 3 miles. And it usually doesn't matter much if you run that or if you walk that from a calorie burning perspective. So I prefer the walking for numerous reasons. One is it's low impact. I can do it even if I'm super sore or hurt. Chances are I can walk. And as you get older and as you get more, maybe if you have neglected your body for a little bit and you feel, those aches and pains, etc., you probably don't want to go running. You want to walk, walk every day if you can, for as long as you can. Take it not only as physical activity, but also as a mental break. I typically use walking the dog. It's a 45-minute walk, typically. Time to think, time that I usually don't have throughout the day. So it's not only physically good for me, it's also mentally good for me to kind of disconnect and just walk. That's the number one tip that I can give you. If you don't do anything else, just pick up walking, and chances are, because walking is so, it brings so much pleasure and it's so low impact and not painful that you keep doing it. Jogging or running, on the other hand, is something that a lot of people do and a lot of people find joyful. But to be perfectly honest, running is not consistent with human evolution. Humans never ran. Why would you do that? If you have to cover 50 miles, you're not going to run. You walk it, and you get there. Running is very hard on your joints. And even if you're young and you don't feel it right now, eventually you will feel it. Running is not consistent with human evolution and is not consistent with human physiology. Long distance running, especially if you want to take it to the extreme levels like ultra long distance running, etc., it shakes your intestines, and there is something called runner's diarrhea. It's not conducive to your gut health. It's not conducive to your joint health. It's not conducive to your heart health, even if you say, okay, cardio workout is good for your health. Yes, to a degree, but that being constantly at a certain heart rate that's not super high, but not super low either, that's very taxing on your heart. And it's, again, not conducive and not consistent with evolution. So running is typically not something that I would recommend. Do it from time to time, that's fine, but I would not recommend making that the core of your exercise routine. What is consistent with human evolution and what is very important is resistance training. You want to lift heavy weights, and that means either, it could be your body weight. If you do body weight exercises, could be barbell work. Ideally, you want to load your structure with significant weight, so to teach your bones to become stronger, to force your body to put more minerals into bone tissue. So your bone density increases, your bones become stronger, your ligaments become stronger, your muscles become stronger. The stronger you are, usually the less pain you'll experience over time. Of course, there's, you can overdo this. You don't need to be a bodybuilder. You don't need to look like Hulk to enjoy optimal health. I would actually argue that there is a threshold, and once you pass that threshold, you're no longer going after optimal health. You're going after optimal performance. And optimal health and performance don't always go in the same direction. At some point they diverge, and you don't want to overstep that if your goal is optimal health and longevity. But lifting heavyweight, resistance training, incredibly important. And the older you get, maybe you want to switch over from lifting, like from doing barbell work and from doing compound movements like power cleans, etc., to maybe more resistance, using resistance bands or body weight. But you have to load your skeleton. You have to load your structure. You have to load your frame. You have to give your body the signals to at least maintain your strength, your bone density, and your joints and your ligaments, etc. But ideally, you want to get stronger, and you can only do that by loading your body. And so I would recommend you pick up some sort of resistance training. And that's one of the reasons really why I enjoy doing CrossFit, because it usually has a combination of various things that are in the realm of functional fitness, stuff that you need every day when you pick up your kids, when you bring grocery bags from the store, when you lift furniture. All those kind of things, are supported by many of the activities that are part of a CrossFit training. And it's, you have different things. It doesn't get boring. It's not like going for a run every day and doing the exact same thing every day. No, there are different things. Speaking of, one of the aspects that is very integral part of CrossFit training is high intensity workouts. And that includes, sprinting. And that could mean sprinting on a bike. It could mean literally sprinting by running fast. It could be, rowing. There are many types of high intensity type of workouts. It could be quick barbell cycling, jumping, all of those things, but you need to engage your fast twitch muscle fibers. You want to do high intensity stuff for numerous reasons. Because it's again consistent with human evolution. We used to run away, at a moment's notice, or run after. Those high intensity short type of workouts are very much what we are built for. And the more we can mimic that, the better, the fitter we become and the healthier we become. So that's why I'm a huge fan of sprinting. But again, the older you get, maybe the running type of sprinting might not be conducive to your physiology, your state of health that you're in. Maybe you already have bad knees and bad this and that. So sprinting might not be in the cards. But you can do sprint workouts on a bike, be it an air bike, or the one I prefer is a bike called Caro. It's a reduced exertion, high intensity interval training bike. I get a separate review. I'm going to link that in the show notes. That's one of the best and shortest ways that you can leverage to get a good workout in the shortest amount of time that taxes your cardiovascular system, engages your fast twitch, muscles. It doesn't do the resistance part, so you still want to lift heavy, but at least from a cardiovascular perspective, that's an excellent tool. But there are others. You can use air bikes. You can use, a rowing ergometer. You can use, a ski ergo. You can do a lot of things where you can do high intensity type of workouts. And that's one of the things I highly recommend. And in terms of, how often should you work out? There are different opinions out there. I mean, you want to move to a degree every single day. I strongly believe that sitting even a single day per week is not consistent with human evolution and is not good for you. So if at least you want to take a walk every day, I think that's the bare minimum. Just go out and walk as much as you can, stand as much as you can, sit as little as possible. Be sedentary as little as possible. That's really one of the core things. From there, next step is to walk. Walk as much as you can. You cannot overwalk. You cannot walk too much. You're not gonna cause significant, unless, of course, you walk 50 miles a day. That's a whole, different ball game. You might actually then feel your ankles sore, or your feet, might take a toll and stuff. But, walking 45 minutes every day, walking an hour every day, walking 2 hours every day, that's not a problem. And you should do that as much as you can every day. In terms of high intensity and resistance training, I've come to the conclusion at my age, at 41, that more is not always better. I used to work out, do CrossFit 5, sometimes 6 times a week. I don't do that every day, or I don't do that anymore, period, because I need more time to recover. And recovery is really another important aspect. It's the other side of the coin of physical activity. You need to give your body time to recover. If you don't do that, then it's going to be counterproductive. You're going to increase your risk of injury. You're not going to get as strong or as fit as quickly as you would like. You might even run into a recovery deficit where your performance goes down and your fitness goes down over time. So that's why it's so important to work out hard, lift heavy weights, be sore. All of that is good, but then give your body time to recover. For me personally, it means, and it's different for everyone, I try to have 1 to 2 days in between intense workouts. On those days where I don't work out, I might do, ride the bike. I might, I go for a walk for sure. I might go swimming. I do something low impact that is conducive to recovery, that increases blood flow. I might use the sauna, which is another, way of giving your body a mild cardiovascular workout, because my heart rate goes up in the sauna. If I stay for 30 minutes and I have a heart rate of 110 for 30 minutes, it's a mild cardio workout, that's similar type of to, walking, for example. And so those things I do, but you really have to listen to your body. And one of the things that I pay close attention to is my heart rate variability, or HRV. And you can use this using various tools. I use, I have a Whoop, I have the Oura Ring, I have different tools that can measure my HRV, so I can keep tabs on my trends. And if I see that my trend is going down, that could be an indication that I'm in overtraining, so I have to back up a little bit. If I'm constantly at a very high HRV and I never dip down below my baseline or close to my baseline, that's an indication that I probably can do more to challenge my body a little bit more. And so obviously an important aspect of physical activity is not only the recovery part, but the nutrition aspect, which plays into recovery and physical performance. So depending on, if your main goal with physical activity is longevity and health, then, you need to pay less attention to certain things than if you want to improve your performance, if you're competitive. But regardless, nutrition plays an important aspect. And so if you don't fuel your body right, and we're going to have a whole other episode just on nutrition, so I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but it's important that you fuel your body properly to reap the most benefits from the physical activity you perform. And that is particularly true for two things. One is your micronutrients, meaning your vitamins and your minerals, and that your demand for those might go up as you increase your exercise regimen. If you work out more often, more intensively, you have probably higher demand on those micronutrients. And that's why it's so important to eat nutrient-dense foods, in particular organ meats. And it's one of the reasons why, we started MK supplements, to help those who need more micronutrients without necessarily having to worry about cooking fresh organs, to get all of those nutrients in the most bioavailable and readily absorbable form into the body. So check out MK supplements. I'm going to link it down below in the show notes with a discount code. It's my brand. By purchasing, you support this show and the work I do, so I appreciate that. But that's one of the best ways to improve not only your energy levels, but also your physical recovery and exercise performance at the same time. And the other thing is protein. Protein is incredibly important. It's the structure of everything. Protein is that one macronutrient that I think you never have to count, even if you are into counting your calories or macronutrients. Proteins don't count. Eat as much protein as you can. And there is virtually no way to overdo it with protein. I mean, there is, but, practically speaking, eat as much protein as you like, and then worry about the two sources of energy, being fat and carbohydrates, and, work with those depending on what you want to achieve. But eat a lot of protein. And in particular, after working out, if you want to have optimal muscle protein synthesis, meaning your body's ability to build new muscle tissue, to repair muscle tissue after intense workout. The best thing you can consume after a workout is a combination of protein and fat in a roughly 1-to-1 ratio. That's much more beneficial than carbohydrates, which is, the traditional way of fueling after an intense workout, or I need my carbs to replenish energy. Replenishing energy with carbs obviously works. There is something set up, to it, especially if you have multiple competitions, let's say in a day. In between, you want to refuel with carbs, that's perfectly fine. But if you're just an average Joe like you, or like I am, and you just want to improve your, muscle composition, your body composition, and you're not necessarily competing multiple times a day, protein and fat leads to optimal muscle growth, and that's really what I would recommend after a workout, to fuel with that, and then to delay your carbohydrate intake to later. The second side effect of doing that is that you improve your insulin sensitivity. And that's, again, from a longevity, from a metabolic health perspective, incredibly important. So don't worry about the carbs right away. Worry about your micronutrients, your vitamins, your minerals, and your protein intake after a workout. And with that, we're gonna wrap it up. Again, there are many ways of exercise you can do. Do what is fun for you, do what you enjoy, do what you wanna do consistently. It doesn't make sense to do something that you do for 30 days and then you're done and you don't want to do it anymore. Start with something you can sustain. And if you're not working out at all yet, start with walking. Take a walk every single day. You'll find it enjoyable. Walk somewhere in the woods, walk barefoot if you can. Take your dog or your kids, or do it by yourself. I usually enjoy walking by myself with the dog because he doesn't talk to me. And so I can be in my head. I can think, I can, sort my thoughts. I can kind of decompress and then do something high intensity, and if it's only a 7-minute workout, high intensity, a HIIT workout, very short, doesn't take a lot of time, or a re-HIIT workout like the Carol bike takes 9 minutes, do that consistently and you'll reap the benefits. Then throw in some resistance training, be it body weight exercises, jumping, weightlifting, resistance bands, anything you can to add load to your structure. That'll really help. Don't go running every day. I don't think that's a great idea for your joints or your longevity overall. Do something that's either high intensity, that's short, that you enjoy, that's very low impact, but maybe take a little longer, like walking. Swimming is a great way, a whole body workout. Sign up for a CrossFit class, and don't get wrapped up in the competitive aspect and get hurt, but just do it to your abilities. Learn the techniques, learn how to properly squat, learn how to properly, press, learn how to properly, do some of those compound movements. They're incredibly beneficial, very good for your health. And with that, we're gonna wrap it up. Thanks for listening in, and I'll talk to you in the next episode, where I think we're gonna talk about nutrition, one of my favorite topics. So stay tuned, and I'll see you next time.